What's up, everybody? I am your host, a rabid dog who has a taste for children, and that is my co-host, the embodiment of evil who spreads like a virus. And welcome to the Grindhouse Syndicate, where today we give you guys what you have been asking for. We have received many comments, emails, and messages for us to cover this one, and here we are. On this episode, we are talking about Damian Rugna's When Evil Lurks from 2023, which, if I remember right, was very high on both of our best of lists a couple years ago. I think it was number 2 on mine.
Yeah, it was either 2 or 3 on mine.
I remember it being real high up on both lists. Fantastic movie, though. If you haven't seen this one yet, I highly recommend you pause this, watch it, and then come back, because there are some awesome scenes and some really cool surprises that you're just, you just don't see them coming. And I definitely don't want to spoil that stuff for you. Fair warning, though, it is all in Spanish. So if you absolutely can't stand reading, then, maybe this one's not for you. But I would highly recommend that you give it a try. It's totally worth it. It's so good. I think that, at least for me, after the first 10 minutes, I totally forget that, I'm reading. But yeah, it's a really good film. And if you love good kills and amazing effects, you've got to check this one out, man. Even if it's just for the special effects alone, because they're amazing. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of good kills in this.
Yeah, this movie came out of fucking nowhere.
Yeah, it did.
So I just looked. This was number 2 of the best movies of the year for me.
Yeah.
Only behind Evil Dead Rise.
Yep, I was in the same boat.
Yeah, I specifically remember this one literally coming out of nowhere. It was not on my radar at all. I just know it came out and people started talking, and before you know it, everybody was talking about it. And we were, after like a week or so, we were like, all right, let's see what all the talk's about. And man, amazing practical effects. This is also a beautifully shot movie.
Oh, yeah, 100%. So the reason that I waited so long to cover it, despite people writing in about it, was because I was holding out for my Second Sight box set, which finally arrived, and it was totally worth it. So if you're into this movie, definitely pick that up. Especially with a small movie like this, it may never get another physical release again. This could be it.
I think it does have one.
It does. It has one other one.
Yeah. But as far as box sets go, this may be the only one we ever get.
I'll just get this out of the way now. Considering this is a foreign film, spoken in a language I know almost nothing about, I'm 100% positive I'm going to pronounce something incorrectly. I did watch a bunch of videos and stuff trying to get everyone's names down, but unfortunately, everybody pronounced the names differently. So I went with what I thought was the closest to being right, or, what was easier for me to say over the course of 2 hours. So I apologize in advance if I fuck it up. It's not intentional or for lack of trying.
Well, I know I fuck up probably every name in here. I can tell you I looked it up and they're spelled different than they're pronounced. Multiple places spell the names different. Yeah, so I don't even feel like there is a perfect way to pronounce. Depending on who you're talking to, they would tell you you're pronouncing something wrong.
All of the harder ones I actually took from the movie the best I could, because I had to, watch it twice this week. So I think I got them right. We'll see. And one last thing, a big thanks to Chris Webb for becoming a Patreon member and donating 5 months worth of membership in one go. That was awesome. I had to reread that 3 times when I seen it. And of course, huge thank you to our longest running and favorite Patreon members, which is Tony and Hannah, Jess Winter, Brandon Martz, and Brian Hefner. Speaking of Brian, check out his YouTube channel, Hefner Family Adventures, where he does a lot of cool stuff with Halloween Horror Nights. So, with that being said, are you ready to dive into When Evil Lurks?
I am ready.
All right, let's do it.
Hello, boys and ghouls. If you want to stay up to date on what's going on with the show, talk about or submit your movie requests, or just say die, then I got good news for you. You can always find us at one of our social media accounts or our official website at Grindhouse.Horror.Pod.com, Facecrook at the Grindhouse Syndicate Horror Podcast, Instascam at grindhousesyndicate.horror.pod, and many gore, which you can always find links for in the show notes as always. And you know what I always say, the morgue, the merrier. So please subscribe or follow for alerts on new episodes. Now, back to the show, kiddies. Frights, camera, action.
And if you really love us and don't want us to catch an axe to the face because we shot a goat, give us a review. When Evil Lurks is a 2023 supernatural horror film written and directed by Damian Rugna. It was an international co-production of Argentina and the United States, partially funded by Shudder, who allowed Rugna full creative control after the screenplay won second place at an international pitch event hosted by Film Market Hub. It stars Ezekiel Rodriguez and Damian Solomon. It was produced by Shudder, Artmo Sin, and how would I say that? Machiko Films? Machiko Film. Yeah, that sounds right. And distributed by IFC, Shudder, and BF Paris. It had a budget of $2.1 million and no box office because, unfortunately, this movie did not get a wide release for theaters, which is a shame because it is a beautiful film.
It is a shame, but at the same time, that's kind of what allowed it to sneak up.
Yeah.
And I've said this on the show before. There's nothing worse than going into the theaters with super high expectations and being let down. But there's nothing better than going into the theaters and having absolutely no hope for a movie or no expectation and just being blown away. And we kind of got that, but at the house.
Yeah. I also don't know how many people would have went to see it considering it's not at all in English.
Yeah.
That would have hurt it, I think.
That would have been really difficult. That's what caused me to wait a week to watch it. I mean, it literally took me an entire week of listening to people talk about how awesome it is and seeing posts all online. I have 2 kids, as you know, so watching a movie that you have to fully read can be difficult. Like that has to be the kids are in bed. There's no kids around. So, I could definitely see it hurting its theatrical release.
So, filming took place in 2022 in Argentina, which was actually one of the big reasons why Shudder had to step in. Because apparently, while Rugno was shopping the script around, none of the big studios wanted it in Spanish or for it to be filmed in Argentina, which he was dead set on doing this in his home country. So,
good for him.
Yeah,
man.
good for him.
Good for him.
So, during the film's post-production, an early market screening was held for the film in Buenos Aires, where it won the Blood Window Screenings Award. The film premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival on September 13th of 2023 as part of the festival's Midnight Madness section and had a wide release on the Shudder streaming service on October 27th. During a post-premiere audience Q&A at Fantastic Fest, director Damian Rugna said that he got the idea for When Evil Lurks from a series of news stories about farm pesticides in his native Argentina causing widespread health issues. He suggests that corporate apathy for the workers' health and the way the issue occurred out in the middle of nowhere, where it is easy for profiteers and city dwellers to ignore the impact of their choices. This got him thinking about the idea of lurking evils giving free rein to spread. And once you hear that and then you think to the movie, this makes total sense.
Yeah, that literally the best way I can describe it fits like a puzzle piece. Having
Yeah.
just watched the movie and then
Mhm.
hearing that definitely did a good job translating, those inspirations into film.
Yeah. So, when asked about the very shocking deaths in the film and extreme gore, Rugna said that he set out to make a horror film for true horror fans. I would say mission accomplished. Excellent job. I also want to quickly shout out the special effects artist for this movie. His name is Marcos Berta, and he runs Marcos Berta Studios. He did a fantastic job with this movie. I mean, these were some of the best special effects of all of 2023, in my opinion. And if you want to check out some more of his work, he has some really awesome effect work and models and everything. You can find him at marcosbertastudio.com or on his Instagram at marcos.berta.studio. I will tell you, the marcosbertastudio.com has a lot more pictures of stuff.
Yeah, to me there's two things outside of the story and directing that really make this movie what it is, and that is the special effects and cinematography. And if you were to give me the same movie with awful CGI in place of the special effects that we do get, or even just shitty special effects, or them not showing the deaths, I would not have put this movie nearly as high
Yeah.
as I did.
Yeah.
That's what sucked me into the movie.
Oh, 100%. Literally, the first 5 minutes, we see something, and I remember being like, "Oh shit! Like
Yeah.
this is gonna be good if we keep on this track," and we did.
Yeah, and there's seldom CGI use in this movie. There's a couple spots, but it's CGI that's used to enhance the
Mhm.
practical effect, and that's what it should be.
So on the website Rotten Tomatoes, 97% of 121 critics' reviews are positive with an average rating of 7.8 out of 10. The website's consensus reads, a hard-hitting horror film whose surface-level frights are just as engaging as its thematic concerns. When Evil Lurks marks a visceral, unsettling addition to the possession horror canon. On March 26th, When Evil Lurks received a physical Blu-ray release from IFC Films and Shudder with a behind-the-scenes photo gallery. On July 28th of 2025, it received a deluxe physical release from Second Sight Films. The limited edition box set will include both 4K, UHD, and Blu-ray discs, with the main feature and the special features duplicated on each disc. This release includes a range of special features such as behind-the-scenes photo gallery, the original trailer, optional English subtitles, and new interviews with director and actors, amongst other content. Once again, highly recommend picking this thing up. All right, so the ratings. Rotten Tom, 96%. It's up there.
That's good.
IMDb, a 6.9 out of 10. Letterboxd, a 3.5 out of 5. And I can't believe I'm going to say this, but the Google average audience rating is a 3.5 out of 5.
Huh.
What?
Uh,
What?
That's once again, that makes me wonder if the language barrier has
Yeah,
something to do with that.
I think it is. I attempted to show somebody that shall be unnamed this movie actually tonight. And despite the part that they seen, they were like, oh shit, that's wild. That's cool. The next thing they said was, is the whole movie in Spanish? And I was like, oh, it is.
Man, I get it. I don't like reading or having to read an entire movie.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather them do English dubs over top of it if they have the money and the ability to. This movie got big enough where they could. But this movie is so good that it sucks me into a point where I forget that I'm reading it.
Yep,
And
that's what I always tell people. Like 10 minutes in, you forget.
And that's hard because I've watched some good movies that I've had to read and, been like, hey, that was a good movie. but I'm probably not gonna rewatch it for a while because I don't like reading it, and this movie, like I said, was so good that I didn't knock it for that. I would never knock the rating for that because,
Has nothing to do with
it
how
has
good, yeah.
nothing to do with the movie or that's not the filmmaker's fault at all, where they live, where they grew up, where they made this movie. But on a personal level, like I said, there has been movies that were good that I'm like, that was good, but I don't care for having to read a whole movie. So I probably won't watch this one again for a couple years. This movie is so good that it literally, you forget that you were reading it.
This movie came out in 2023, including the 2 times I watched it this week. I've probably seen this movie, no shit, about 8 times. So I've
Jesus
seen it a
Christ.
lot of times, yeah.
Like outside of watching it or writing the episode?
Outside of writing the episode, I've seen it 6 times.
Uh,
Yeah, 2 years.
so that's a lot.
Yeah. If you would like to watch this movie, you can currently find it streaming on Hulu, AMC Plus, Shudder, Amazon Prime Premium subscription, and for rent on Google Play for $3.99. Or just buy it, man. Just scoop it up. All right, you ready to dive into the plot of this fantastic film?
I am.
All right. So we start out deep in the farmlands of Argentina where we meet our 2 main characters, Pablo and Jaime. And they are 2 middle-aged brothers who own some land and a house together. And our story immediately picks up as the 2 men hear 5 gunshots in the distance, which quickly puts the brothers on alert. We then see them load up some guns and discuss who it might be, with Jaime saying that it may be the next-door neighbor. But Pablo quickly shoots this down, believing this to be something bad. They then walk outside and look around, and after realizing that the gunshots came from the woods, they decide it would be better to go looking when the sun comes up, because it is currently dark as fuck. We then get a still shot of the land at night where we see a broken tree in front of a field of creepy low fog and a dark forest in the distance, which is a perfect place for our title card, When Evil Lurks. We then skip to the morning where we see Pablo, Jaime, and their 2 dogs head off into the woods, and the dogs quickly find something pretty crazy, which is half of a hand torn off just below the knuckles. And it looks like a fucking real hand. 100%.
It does. The whole hand and lower half of the body they're about to find looked fucking fantastic.
So while looking at the hand, the dogs then find something else pretty close by, which we see is the lower half of a man's body completely torn to shreds, which Jaime immediately blames on a puma. Yeah, the legs where like the fucking intestines and guts are like falling out of, like, I guess to be the bottom of his torso. It's 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10
Yeah.
effect. Yeah, looks great.
Yeah, if I walked across this or walked up on it, I would definitely think that this was a real person
yeah.
that was ripped in half.
100%. So, yeah, Jaime thinks it could be a puma, but Pablo shoots this down after examining the body parts, claiming that this man had been cut with something sharp, meaning that this was definitely a person. Next to this set of legs, they find something very interesting. We then see a wooden box that has been busted open, revealing a bunch of gold-colored metal parts that obviously go together, but it is not clear at all what this device is. To me, it looks like something you'd see on an old, like, 1700s ship, like, for fucking navigation or something.
Yeah.
That's what I originally thought it was. Like, this is some kind of navigation tool or, where you fucking use the goddamn stars and constellations or something. Like,
Or like a old-timey, like, calendar where they use the stars and the
Definitely.
position of the sun. Yeah, definitely looks like something old.
So, as Pablo is trying to figure out what this thing is and how it goes together, Jaime then walks over and also starts to look at the pieces when he says that he doesn't know what it is, but he has seen this thing somewhere before. Amongst the wreckage of this box, Pablo also finds a folder containing some important information in it, Unfortunately, though, most of it is written in some weird unknown language. But they do find a hand drawn map of their neighbor Ruiz's farm and a photocopy of an ID which belongs to a woman who is renting a house from Ruiz, and her name is Maria. So, after gathering all of the information they can, the brothers then walk over to Maria's to tell her about the dead body and ask her what she knows. But while explaining this to her, we see that Maria has a very worried look on her face. Maria then explains that this was a man that they were waiting on from the government that was coming to kill her son, Uriel. So this very much confuses the brothers, and they decide to go in the house and see what the fuck is going on with Uriel. And as they walk into this back room where he's being kept, they are absolutely shocked by what they see. So this dude is laying on this bed wearing nothing but the dirtiest, nastiest pair of underwear I have ever seen. He is very, very swollen. He has these like red rash looking marks all over his skin, and on the side of his neck is a huge, huge patch of boils that are just oozing yellow pus and blood. This like almost made me nauseous.
Yeah, if I seen this in real life, I'd fucking throw up, and there's no way in hell I'd go back in and look at this thing.
It just like the scene, like it makes my stomach queasy with the pus, and it's just like leaking out of his mouth. Like it just grosses me out, man. It's
Yeah.
just bad, grosses me out. By the way, Uriel is a big ass puppet. Apparently, they had 4 people inside this thing controlling it.
Ah,
They also went back in post and did the face. The
yeah.
face is CGI.
So there's one scene in the whole movie, which is his last scene, that I could tell that it was CGI. But yeah, outside of that,
Well, you got
like
me
it was
beat because
done.
I couldn't. I
Well,
definitely could not tell.
that's one of those, like, when I made the comment, like, CGI was seldomly used, but it was used to enhance practical effects, and that's, that's what it should be used for. It was referencing that scene. I couldn't tell up until that part at all. So for this whole, like, beginning of the movie scene right here with his face being CGI'd in there, I didn't notice that at all.
I thought this was an actor in like a
I did
suit.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, this is a it is basically a puppet. I think there's parts of it that's animatronic. But yeah, it's basically a puppet, and this was designed and built by special effects artist Marcos Berta.
Well, that's insane.
It is insane.
That's insane. This reminded me of the Dawn of the Dead remake.
Oh yeah,
The
the big lady.
wheelbarrow.
Mhm.
Yeah, the fucking wheelbarrow zombie. But if you added, like, a ton of boils, like, she was stung by, like, 150 bees, and she was severely allergic. And it's,
Yeah.
like, all over her face and shit. Yeah, this guy is fucked up.
Yeah. So as the brothers stand there in shock, Maria and her other son begin explaining that Uriel has been rotten for over a year, and they contacted the government to come deal with it, which was the guy who got killed in the woods. Maria then explains that she blames herself for it going on this long because before she contacted the government, she attempted to pray to God to heal him. And this is important because after she says this, Pedro turns and screams at her, "Churches are dead." We don't know why this upsets him so much or why churches are no longer in existence, but we will find out later because it pertains to what exactly is going on here.
Yeah, and that line and kinda some of the stuff that happens before this kinda gives you the sense that we are dropped in the middle of the story in this almost post-apocalyptic. Now, it's not quite
Yes,
post-apocalyptic, but that's the word I wanna use for it. There's clearly something that you as the viewer don't know is going on at this point in the movie, And this is kind of like they're slowly feeding us some of this story about what's going on. But clearly, it's not just here. It's not just this town. This is a widespread thing
Yeah,
that's going on.
this is a world event, yeah.
Yeah, it's not like they walked in on this rotten person and just had no idea, no clue what this could possibly be. They know what this is. But yeah, I would if I walked in on this, I would be mad at the family for even allowing for I would be grossed out at them just for living in the house with this thing for this long.
Well, we do find out later on kind of why they had to, and one thing that I do love that they include was she had contacted the government over a year ago, and it's one of those situations where there's so much red tape and, anytime the government's involved, it takes forever, and I think this is really cool because you're marrying a supernatural event to real life government, and you're putting them together, but it doesn't feel weird.
Yeah.
It's very natural feeling.
Which tells you, like with my post-apocalyptic comment, although it's not post-apocalypse, it's that feeling that this is widespread. Like, the government knows about this. This isn't, like, something that may or may not be going on. This is very known, across the world.
Yeah, this is more like post major event. Like, kind of what COVID is gonna look like in 50 years, you
Yeah.
know?
But if COVID was, like, getting possessed and
Yeah,
rotting.
yeah.
Yeah, super, super gross, and, yeah, I know you mentioned that the filmmaker kind of part of his inspiration for making this movie was kinda how the big cities ignored the stuff that was happening out on these farms with these with their I guess you said it was like fertilizer problems that was making the livestock sick,
It
and
was making people sick, yeah.
yeah, and it was being spread through the livestock, and that the big cities were really able to cover this up and kind of ignore it because it was out in the country, and it was a problem they didn't really wanna deal with, and after hearing that, coming into this situation, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So Maria then explains that because the government was taking so long, they ended up having to take care of him and keep him alive until the government cleaner got there to kill him. This also makes no sense to us, but will be answered later on. So the brothers then head up to the local police station, which, because this is like out in the middle of nowhere, it's very small, it's only like 2 cops. And they tell them about the dead guy in the woods and Uriel being a rotten. And the police don't believe them, especially the part about Uriel. And there are a couple really important things here. One, the police are very familiar with the brothers, especially Pedro, meaning he is in trouble a lot. Two, the cop in charge says that the reason he doesn't believe Uriel is a rotten is because almost all reported cases of possession turn out to be fake. So that tells us that rotten means possessed by a demon here. So this causes Pablo and the police chief to get into a screaming match where we eventually see him slam him up against the wall. I love how he like slams him up against the wall, and this police chief who's like jacked up against the wall says, "Give me a reason to throw you in jail." And I'm like, slamming a cop against the wall and threatening him isn't enough to go to jail here?
It's Argentina. They got different
I guess.
different laws, obviously.
You get shot for that here.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah, apparently their cops don't shoot at will.
Oh, they probably don't even have guns.
Protect and serve.
Yeah, so after things calm down a bit, the police chief then says that there is a protocol when it comes to the possessed. He then says that he has to call public health, and then public health has to come and investigate, and so on. So it's starting to look like there is a lot of government red tape when it comes to dealing with this kind of accusation. So after this, we then see the two brothers head to their neighbor Ruiz's farm, where they tell him about everything. And needless to say, he is pissed. and he claims that the government planted the rotten here in order to steal his land. Because we find out here that when your town gets rotten, everybody must pack up and leave immediately.
Yeah, Ruiz really, really, really likes this land and thinks that people will go to absolute insane measures to take this land from him. Like,
Yeah,
holy shit. I think Ruiz is being a little narcissistic here.
yeah, he's a little on his high horse, which that's pretty much what we see out of him while
He
he's
is.
in this movie.
Yes, he is the way broker Donald Trump of Argentina with his land.
Yeah, he's obviously, by looking at him, he's obviously the more wealthy of everyone in this town. I mean, he's the only one that's got like a brand new truck. His wife's got a nice new car. They live in a nice home, tons of land.
Seems
Yeah,
like they rent out
yeah.
part of their massive amounts of land
hmm
to these people.
So Ruiz then says that this all makes sense now because his dogs took off like a month ago because rottens first affect the animals and then the people. And since the government or the police refuse to do anything, it is up to them to take care of this problem or lose everything. He also says something interesting that we heard the cops say earlier, that it's very strange to see a rotten all the way out here because they typically pop up in cities where it is easier to spread the evil, I guess, because we find out that this possession spreads very much like a virus.
Easier for the evil to lurk and get away with it in big cities
Yeah.
with big populations.
So later that night, we see Ruiz, who is now very pissed off, head over to Maria's holding a shotgun. He then bursts through the door and quickly finds the room Uriel is in, where he points the gun at his head, threatening to shoot him. And the whole time that this is happening, Maria is standing behind him, pleading for him not to do it because killing a rotten will make it worse. While he stands there pondering on what to do, Uriel begins to speak to him, calling him a coward, begging him to pull the trigger, and even threatening to possess Ruiz's unborn child. So the rotten wants to be killed so he can spread the evil to more people. And we're going to see this throughout the story.
Yeah, this is also super significant to the story as far as the viewer and kind of learning what's going on here. That the evil that is possessing this guy knows about Ruiz's wife and her being pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, like, talks shit to him about, possessing his unborn child and killing his wife coming out of the womb and all this. This guy has been locked away in this room for over a year that we know of. So there would be no way for this guy to know that Ruiz's wife is pregnant. So now at this point, as a viewer, you're like, okay, we're dealing
It's legit.
with something that is evil and knows more than what it should.
So we then skip to the next morning where we see Ruiz sitting in his truck, very upset, when suddenly his wife and the two brothers show up, worried about what he has done. Thankfully, though, it is revealed that he did not kill Uriel and now has a plan to load him in the truck and take him 3 hours away. This next scene where they're trying to move him is so goddamn gross. He has this thick yellow pus like pouring out of his mouth and shit. The sheets are so saturated with his fucking body goo. The shit is dripping everywhere. It's like when you carry like a garbage bag out to the can and it's like leaking all the way to the fucking to outside. Like that
Oh,
is what the sheet looks like.
so much worse than that.
Oh, it's disgusting.
It is pretty fucking putrid. These boils, you remember Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
awesome movie that
Yeah,
we covered
totally
that
awesome.
everybody loves so much. All those like disgusting like boils that they have that like ooze this pus. That's what this guy reminds me of.
Yeah, Yeah, I haven't seen that movie, I don't think, since we covered it, but, I do remember one of the characters being very
And they both have, like
pus like that, yeah.
yeah, they both have, like, major amounts of, like, boils that
Yeah.
just pus over, and it's fucking gross.
Another important thing too, while they are moving him, Jaime notices the revolver and bullets that were most likely used to kill the man from the government is sitting next to Uriel. So he's beginning to suspect that this family has something to do with the chopped up guy in the woods. So now that he is in the truck, we see Ruiz, Jaime, and Pedro all head off on a little road trip to get rid of a now possessed Uriel. But after a couple of hours, Ruiz gets distracted and has to swerve to avoid hitting this kid that is just standing in the middle of the road. Now, when he swerves, he doesn't like wreck or anything. He just kind of like does a quick swerve, but it'll be important here in a minute. So, about 20 minutes later, they arrive at a small bridge out in the middle of nowhere and they decide that this is a good place to dump the body. But when they go to open the back of the truck, they find it is empty. We then quickly realize that when they swerved to miss the kid, Uriel must have gotten out. I feel like, when this happened and Uriel, like, he jumped out of the truck or whatever and hit the road, I feel like he would have exploded like a fucking graboid in Tremors.
Yeah,
Just fucking goo everywhere.
I agree, and this guy clearly can't move, like, he didn't jump out of the back of this truck. So, and we get a shot of them looking back at the kid in the bike, and he's nowhere to be seen on the road. So, clearly there's, like, some evil at play here, making sure that his body was not to be seen once it got out of the back of
Yeah.
'cause it's not like he hit something and, like, the truck bounces up or they almost flip it or something. It's a very simple swerve, but I think it was very, uh, influenced. This whole situation was very
Oh,
influenced by
yeah.
the evil.
Definitely. So, assuming that they got Uriel far enough away from the land, they decide to pack it up and head back home, where we see Ruiz drop the brothers off at their land and head back to his house. So, the next morning, we see Ruiz's wife begin yelling for him, where she informs him that one of the goats is possibly possessed. He then runs and gets his shotgun, where he fires a round into the air, causing all of the goats to take off running, except for one. So this goat begins staring him down as he points this gun at it, to the point where it literally walks over and presses its head against the barrel. Now, the whole time this is going on, Ruiz's wife is yelling not to shoot it because remember, using guns to kill them just makes it worse. So she then runs to grab a wood cutting axe to use instead. So we then see a bit of a standoff between Ruiz and this goat where he's telling it to leave, but it just continues to stare him down when suddenly the goat makes a noise which scares Ruiz, causing him to accidentally pull the trigger, blowing half of the goat's face off.
Yeah, the goat walking up to the gun, because one thing we see with the rotten, and we see it later on in the movie, is these possessed people are constantly talking shit, trying to get that person to kill them with a gun
Yeah.
because they're not supposed to. Apparently, all we know is that that's a big rule, and if you do kill them with a gun, you will die. Like, no matter what, you will die, and your family will normally die as a result of that. And them having the goat, like, walk up and put its head up against the gun
Like taunting
was
him.
such a
Yeah.
good way of showing, like, an animal that can't talk, like, taunting him, like, basically, like, "Do it, bitch."
Yeah, exactly.
This is like the bad Philip's brother.
Yep. So we then get a close up of Ruiz, who is in a bit of shock at what just happened, when suddenly we see the axe blade slam into his face. This is an amazing scene. I remember when I first seen it, I was like, okay, locked in, ready to fucking go. This is great.
That's literally the very thing I had in my notes. This whole scene was when I was locked in,
Yeah, because it's
officially.
beautiful. Of course, they did it by making a very, very realistic copy, fake head of this actor. You can actually see pictures of it on that website I was talking about earlier. But yeah, it looks amazing. Totally fucking slams the axe right into his face. The camera then zooms out where we see that it was his wife that killed him as she then kneels down in the grass, flips the axe the other way, and begins beating her own face with the blade until she is dead. And this is obviously why they say do not use guns against the possessed, because once you kill the possessed, somebody nearby or you just immediately gets possessed. But yeah, such a fucking amazing scene here.
Yeah, it was as good as his death looked, it was hers that really got to me because it's so creepy, so slow and unsettling. There's no background music here, so all we hear is the axe shots that she is giving to her own face. And what really made it like just really creepy and get under my skin was that she starts axing her face, and we see up close the first couple shots, and she's got a pretty good sized axe hole in her face that she's taking these hits with. But each hit gets weaker and weaker
Yeah.
as her brain is being destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
And like her just absolute brain trauma, and as her body dies, the hits get weaker and weaker to the point where the last hit is just her sliding this axe into this hole in her face before she falls over.
Yeah, it's great. So later that night, we jump back over to the brother's house where we can definitely see that there is evil looming over this land now. Maria's youngest son then comes knocking on the door where he informs the two brothers that he found Ruiz and his wife dead, and his mom Maria has now disappeared. He then begs the brothers to let him stay the night, but they of course say fuck no, with Pablo informing him that he could go stay the night in the barn. But he has to be gone by dawn. So after this, the brothers then sit down by the fireplace and discuss the situation, where they both agree that this place is fucked and they have to leave, taking nothing with them. So what they plan to do is to drive into town where Pablo would gather his ex-wife and kids, and Jaime can gather their mom. And once everybody meets back up, they will drive as far away as they can. So we then see Pablo arrive at his ex-wife's house and knock on the door where her new husband Leo answers. And Pablo's like, he kind of just like pushes his way in and starts to tell him to wake everybody up because they urgently need to leave. And it probably doesn't help that the whole time he is trying to explain this situation to Leo, he is getting undressed. Because one thing we find out is when you come into contact with a rotten, you have to burn your clothes afterwards. Like this evil will literally latch on to your clothes or any objects you have, and will literally the next place you go, it'll jump onto somebody else. Very
Yeah.
much like some kind of virus.
Yeah, I completely don't blame Pedro in this whole scenario. Like my first thought, if we're I'm running, I'm getting away from the city. I gotta go get my kids. But he probably should have had a change of clothes real quick before he looks like super crazy. His wife, we find out, has like a restraining order on him, and he is standing butt ass naked trying to speak to his ex-wife and her new husband. Definitely makes himself look a bit crazy here. But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't blame Pedro. I have seen people debate about this movie that Pedro shouldn't have taken any evil towards his kids. He shouldn't even have risked it. He should have just left immediately. And a lot of people in my argument to that is if he knew that the city was going to fall really quickly and his kids live in this city, that you got to go get your kids. And you can't leave your kids behind.
Yeah, I have, a pretty pretty solid opinion and have some things to say about this character, but I'm holding it to the very end because a lot of people's complaints with the movie or his character is, his mistakes throughout the movie, but mainly the one in the end. So I definitely have a strong opinion about him and all this shit, but I'm gonna hold off.
Yeah, and one of the central parts of this whole story is how people react under high stress situations,
Yeah.
like how they handle how you can kind of throw the rule book and what just your common sense thought would be, how all that kind of goes to shit when you're going through a situation that's life or death for you and your family. And I mean, I will say Pedro in this instance, he is very much he is there to not only pick up his kids, but his ex-wife and her husband.
Yeah,
He's
he's
like,
trying to save everybody.
yeah, he's not just like, I would get them being a little bit more on edge if he was like, "Okay, I'm taking just the kids," or "I'm taking the kids and my ex-wife." But he's telling Leo to pack his fucking shit up. He's coming too.
So Pedro ends up getting butt ass naked in their kitchen as Leo stands there in disbelief when suddenly his ex wife Sabrina comes around the corner and she is pretty pissed. So before we go any further, I will explain the family dynamics here. So Pedro and Sabrina have two sons. Santino is the youngest, probably around like, I don't know, 7 or 8. And Jahar is the oldest, probably like 15, maybe 16, but he has severe autism. Now, Sabrina is married to Leo now, and they also have a child, which is a little girl around 5 or 6 named Vicky. And we also find out here that Sabrina and Pedro did not have a good marriage that led into an even worse divorce, with Sabrina getting a restraining order on Pedro. So yeah, Pedro's standing there naked while he is arguing with Sabrina and Leo about leaving, and he tries to tell them about the rotten, but they don't want to hear anything he has to say and basically just want him to get the fuck out. And the whole time this argument is going on, we see Leo and Sabrina's big ass dog sniffing Pedro's clothes. So Pedro ends up getting a set of clothes from Leo, where he then burns his old set of clothes in their driveway. And after this, they go back into the house where they continue arguing over getting the kids together and leaving. And while this is going on, we see two of the children, Santino and his little sister Vicky, just kind of hanging out and playing with the dog. Santino then sits on the steps and watches his sister with a big smile on his face when suddenly, as she is petting the dog Roger, the dog just snaps, locks onto her face, dragging her under the dining room table where he begins tearing her apart like a fucking rag doll. This is almost certainly the most shocking and memorable scene from this film. Big props to Damian Rugna for putting it in. You know those shows like they come out with like every September, October is like the 100 most shocking moments in horror, those shows. This is definitely going to be on all those shows.
Yeah. Yeah, no
100%. This
doubt.
scene is going to be on those shows. Like this is how big of a scene this is.
Yeah, I put this up there on shock value of, like, Hereditary when the girl knocks her fucking head off on
Yes.
the
Yep.
pole.
Yep.
Like, that was one of those moments in the movie where you're like, "Holy fucking shit, I did not see that coming." They set this scene up where they show the dog sniffing the clothes really hard, so you already know about the animals turning first. So you have an idea that this dog is there may be something up with this dog. They set the scenes up where multiple times in between their arguments, they show this dog and this little girl standing together. So you have a feeling as a viewer that this dog is about to snap and that something's going to happen. But you always think as a viewer they're not going to kill this like 5, 6, 7-year-old girl. Like they're not going to do that, but you do have an idea that the dog is gonna snap.
I'll be
And
honest.
and
I didn't. The first time I seen it, no fucking clue. It just totally pulled the rug out from under me.
Yeah, so I knew the dog, something was gonna happen with the dog because of the way the dog's sniffing the clothes, and they kept setting this scene up like 3 or 4 different times before it happens, just showing her and the dog next to each other while they're arguing in the background. But the way they do it, like, you think something's gonna happen, but the little girl's gonna be okay, she's gonna be saved, but this gonna kinda be the clue to Sabrina and Leo that something is going on. But no, they completely 100% go in the opposite direction, and he straight just latches on, and this dog is fucking massive, by the way.
It's
For
it's a
people who have not seen this movie, this dog is a fucking tank.
I believe it's a massive. That's how you say it, right? Mastiff,
That
massive.
they've been
Yeah.
shooting with steroids, and he's been hitting the fucking gym.
Yeah,
Like,
it's huge.
this dog is a gym bro.
Yeah.
Like, he is 100% a gym bro. Like, he street fights for sure. And he snatches this little girl by the fucking head and drags her off. And I remember being like, holy shit. I respect movie makers when they're willing to go to places that other movie makers won't go. And this is a huge, huge example of that.
Yeah. So Santino, who is now in shock, then goes and looks under the table where he sees his little sister just being shredded by this huge dog. And he then goes and he tells the adults who are still arguing, prompting Leo to go take a look. And when he does, Roger comes bolting out from under the table and out of the front door, still carrying Vicky by her neck. Funny thing that Damian said about this scene was the dog was so friendly and lazy, it was hard to film this.
Mm.
Like, they just could not hardly get the dog to, like, be aggressive or, you know, it was just friendly and lazy dog. That was his thing.
He was worn out from leg day at the gym.
Must have. So the dog takes off down the street with Leo and Pablo chasing after it, but they quickly lose track of him and begin to just kind of look around the whole neighborhood. Pedro ends up giving up pretty quickly as he heads back to the house where he begins to get his 2 kids ready because he realizes this situation is fucked and he needs to get them out of here ASAP. While he is doing this, we see Leo come back and grab his gun, and this is where Pedro tries to warn him not to use a gun on the dog because remember what happened to Ruiz. Unfortunately, though, Leo is way too consumed with grief to really listen to anything Pedro is trying to say. He then jumps in his truck and takes off with Pedro chasing behind him, still trying to warn him. Unfortunately, though, when Pedro catches up to him, he sees that he did shoot the dog with the gun. So Pedro then heads back to the house, but as he is walking up to the driveway, he spots a totally fine Vicky hugging Sabrina, which makes absolutely no fucking sense to him, which is when he realizes that it's the evil playing tricks on them.
Yeah. This is not Sabrina or this is not Vicky.
Yeah.
This is evil. This is some evil possessed version of Vicky because everybody just seen her get her face ripped the fuck off and her drug away. So clearly there's something not right here. Leo shooting the dog with the gun, knowing that he's not supposed to. Another great example of a big theme of this movie is, you know, we have these clear rules laid out that everybody would be okay if they just followed these rules. And it shows how evil gets in people's heads and these super stressful environments. People throw those out the window in these high stress situations.
Especially when kids are involved.
Yeah.
So he goes and gathers his 2 kids and steals Sabrina's car. And as he is pulling out to leave, he gets cut off by Leo, who swerves into the driveway, slamming into Sabrina and squishing her in between his truck and the house. So Sabrina is definitely dead. And remember this whole thing started because the dog sniffed Pedro's clothes. So we're kind of getting a really good visual on how this thing can spread.
Yeah, and Vicky tells Sabrina right before this when she's, like, hugging her in disbelief, that Leah's gonna come back with the truck and boom.
Yeah.
She kinda makes a fist bump and she's like, "And boom." And she kinda just blows this off because of this high stressful
Yeah.
environment. She can't believe, like, her daughter's back, and she just writes it off as this weird thing a kid would say, which is just more proof that this kid is the embodiment of evil, just 100%. I don't even think that this is the kid. I think that this is just a demon
Yeah.
portraying the kid at this point because the kid got so fucked up.
She also, like, dances in celebration when her mom gets, like, fucking splattered.
Yeah.
Yeah. So next we see Pedro arrive at his mother's house where her and Jaime are waiting. And they get in the car and they begin to leave town. And we find out here that they haven't really told their mom what exactly is going on yet. And when they do, she's in total denial, much like everybody else they have tried to convince. And also, Pedro has not told any of them what happened at Sabrina's yet. So during this car ride is where we get a little bit of the history of the rotten slashed possessed. So apparently, a long time ago, rottens kind of appeared and began causing chaos, which once again was mostly in the cities. It was very rare for it to happen in a small town or village. And at some point, humanity found a way to eradicate it. And in order to keep it eradicated, there were 7 rules that everyone needed to follow. Number 1, don't use electric lights. The shadows that lights cast draw the evil in. 2, stay away from animals. 3, do the possessed no harm. 4, take nothing with you. 5, never say the evil's name out loud, like Lucifer, Azrael, or Beelzebub. 6, never kill them with a gun. And number 7, never fear death. They even talk about how they made a little song that pretty much everybody knows. It is not at all a catchy song. I could see why people fucking forgot it. It's a bad song.
Well, it almost seemed like a nursery rhyme that was around and when the grandma was a kid. So one interesting thing that this scene kind of tells us is that this happened before when even when grandma was a kid, this was kind of a nursery rhyme, but she says that not only has she never seen a rotten, that she's never known anybody who said they've even seen a rotten. So that makes a little bit more sense of why Sabrina and the cops in the town and everybody kind of just blow what Pedro's saying off because this is something that is extremely rare and it hasn't like even in the grandma's time she hasn't even known somebody who's come across one of these things. So it's almost like this long eradicated thing. The government knows about it, they know it was a thing, but it's almost become like an urban legend to sort.
Yeah, I mean, we know that it was in the grandmother's lifetime because of another character, but I assume that she's never dealt with it because she lives in a small town, and it sounds like this used to happen a lot more in the bigger cities. So yeah, she's basically I mean, you gotta think, this was probably like 50 years ago at this point. It's been so long, she never came across it, plus it's been so long. I mean, the cop even says, like, they're almost all fake at this point, so it makes sense why no one believes them and why the government's not very quick to deal with this.
And a lot of people call into the police with these reports of what they think is rottens or possessions.
They're
Uh,
really just gross people.
yeah, like somebody having like a fentanyl
Yeah.
fucking crisis, something like that. They get a lot of calls that aren't that don't end up being a rotten or possessed. That's why the police say, like, you'll know it when you see it.
This whole thing though with the rules and the song and all this stuff and the legend, Damian Rugna did talk about this, and he said that he didn't want to basically give you the backstory of this movie by, like a news report or just a little thing in the beginning. He wanted to make it seem natural. He wanted to drop you in the middle of something that was realistic, where you would have to learn about what is going on from different people and different things, much like you would in real life. And
As the characters do as well.
yeah, and that makes the story so much more of a deep story, I think, than necessarily just here's a news thing or here's a guy explaining it at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Throughout this movie, you are learning bits and pieces about this, which is one interesting thing that they do. They don't explain it in a news story or something like that. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting dynamic that you as the viewer are kind of trying to learn. Like, you get dropped right in the middle of this, and I will say pacing wise, the pacing's pretty good up until this point, but from here on out, like, it's balls to the wall. Like,
Yeah.
there's constantly shit going on.
So after the grandmother Sarah gets done explaining these rules, we then begin to hear Jahar, Pedro's oldest son, start repeating in the backseat the name Azriel. But this is soon interrupted by Sabrina calling Sarah's phone, which is weird considering we just seen her die. So Pedro takes the phone and gets out of the car to answer it, and it's obvious that Sabrina is all evil and shit right now. But she does say a couple interesting things here. First, she talks about how worthless he has always been, and that's why she cheated on him all the time. And then she talks about how he gave her a broken kid, and then he wanted to kill him. Now, this doesn't make a ton of sense to us right now, but it does come back later. So she then tells Pedro that she's going to find out where he is and come after them, and this is where Pedro is done with the conversation and he smashes the phone. His brother sees this and comes running over asking what's going on, and this is where Pedro reveals to him that the real Sabrina is actually dead, and he watched her husband Leo run her over with the truck. After he calms Pedro down a little bit, he says, "I think I know somebody who can help us, and they don't live too far from here. And, worst case scenario, she can loan us enough money to get us to where we're going."
And hearing your crazy ex-wife going off, telling you that you don't know what she's capable of, and saying all these awful things, as if that's not scary enough, but when you know she's dead,
Yeah,
like this is
and
a
evil.
dead, evil entity
Mm-hmm.
speaking through her, God, that's horrifying.
He can literally say now, though, like, my ex-wife's a demon.
Yeah.
So we then cut to them arriving at Jaime's friend's place, who is an older lady named Merta. And she agrees to let them stay and help them out with the money, but Pedro doesn't want to stay. He wants to get the money and head towards the big city. The problem is, Mirta's money is held in the bank and won't be available until Monday. Also, everyone is tired of being in the car, and Jahar has just shit himself and needs to be changed. Another small interesting thing we learn here, despite Mirta being a very well put together woman, has no electricity, which we will learn why very soon. So while Pedro begins to clean Jahar up, we then cut to a conversation between Jaime and Mirta in the house, and we find out that Jaime and Mirta used to be romantically involved. And at that time, Mirta told him that she was very familiar with the possessed. She then tells him that she thinks Jahar is now a rotten, but Jaime immediately shoots this down by telling her that he is just severely autistic. She then brings up Pedro, asking if he is the brother that plugged the heater outtake in order to kill himself and his children, which brings us back to what Sabrina said to him on the phone and makes sense why she was able to get the restraining order on him. Jaime immediately shoots this down, though, telling her that no, that was just something that his ex-wife made up in order to get custody of the kids. Next, we cut to nighttime where we see that Jahar refuses to get out of the car, prompting Pedro to volunteer to sleep in the car with him, while his mom, brother, and other son sleep in the house with Merta. And this is where we get a really interesting clue into the ending of this movie, as we see Pedro find a picture that Jahar drew depicting a bunch of children standing in a field with another child who is all red just as the sun is coming up. Back inside the house, we see that everyone is asleep with Sarah and Santino upstairs in a bedroom. And I don't know if you caught it, but Santino's stuffed animal has a little light shining on it, which projected the stars on the ceiling. I
Uh,
think this is one of the things that brings her in because you're not supposed to have any light.
uh,
Yeah. So we then see Sarah wake up with a now very grotesque looking Sabrina holding a still sleeping Santino. And when Sarah sees the side of Sabrina's crushed face, she freaks out and runs downstairs where her and Jaime wake up Pedro. Dude, the side shot of her face is fucking awesome. Like you can see in her mouth and her teeth and shit.
yeah.
Looks good.
Yeah, her, like, turning from the darkness into the light, just, revealing her destroyed fucking face, I thought was genius cinematography, and it makes this scene super, super fucking creepy and unsettling
Yeah.
because it's so quiet and it's so slow, and she almost has that there's this just motherly instinct of her holding and patting her child, and, it's this sacred thing to us humans, and then as she turns and the light hits her face, it's so fucking creepy.
It reminded me of, like, Jason's face when he's got the broken mask and you can, like, see in his mouth.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
that
awesome.
was fucked.
Yeah. So Pedro heads upstairs where he confronts an evil Sabrina, and she informs him that she is taking her children to a place where no one can hurt them. And as she turns around, Pedro sees Santino wake up and call out for him when suddenly Sabrina runs and jumps off of the balcony where she quickly disappears off into the woods. So everybody runs outside, kind of looking around at where the hell they went. Sabrina and Santino are totally gone, so they immediately run to the car to check on the other kid, where they find him still in the back seat. One thing I don't get, and maybe you know, is why all of a sudden is half the car covered in blood?
Well, I mentioned that here because I'm like, "God damn, she got a ton of blood all over this fucking car." And all I can think of is that is, Santino's blood
That's
when she
fast,
runs,
though.
over well, we see the aftermath of what she does to him, and it's pretty gruesome. We also see her run her bloody hand across the car, and the autistic son can't say anything. Like, that's
Yeah.
one fucked up thing is he sees this happening, and he can't move or say anything to alert anybody. And then we get a cutscene from that. So, we don't know how much more interaction she had with him in the car or at the car, but we do know that he the very next scene after this, we
Yeah.
find out that he is, evil is lurking inside of him now too, so we wonder what we missed in that scene.
Well, I think that it happened before. My opinion is when he was saying Azrael over and over again, because when they first go to bed, like he's already drawn that picture of basically the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that he got kind of possessed before. But yeah, my only guess with the blood splattered all over the side of the car is I think you're right. I think it's the other kid. So, as everyone begins panicking, Mirza calls Jaime over and informs him that Jahar is now possessed. And of course, he is in denial, but she quickly shuts this down by showing him Jahar's hands, which have now become twisted and deformed. She then explains that she has seen this in autistic people before because when a demon enters their body, they can't navigate the autistic mind and they become trapped. So she then calls the two brothers inside where we see her pull out an old case. And as she begins going through this case, we start to see some of the same stuff we saw in the woods in the beginning where the guy was cut in half. And this is obviously the tool that they use to kill these demons. She then explains that the demon uses your own fears against you. And because Pedro was so scared of losing his children, this actually revealed their location to evil Sabrina. So the trick is not to be scared of shit. That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
So Jaime's he mentions in the beginning when they find that the cleanser, they find that weird piece of metal,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he says, "I've seen this before." And Pedro asks him where, and he says, "I don't know." That now makes a lot more sense with Marta, with his past with Marta. Obviously, that is where he has seen this before.
Yeah. And then finding out how the demon basically can read like your deepest fears and stuff. This also makes sense of why Uriel was telling Ruiz that he was going to possess his unborn child because he was obviously reading his worst fears.
Yeah,
Yep.
he was
Yep.
tapping into his mind there.
Mm-hmm. So Mirta then explains that they don't have time to go after Sabrina and Santino because they must find Uriel. But the two brothers then try to explain that Uriel's dead already. But she shoots this down, telling him that this is all happening because Uriel is in what they call the birthing process, meaning that he is on the verge of giving birth to the true physical embodiment of evil here on Earth. So right now, it's just like this entity that kind of floats around from people to people, but they are trying to get a physical demon on planet Earth, which has never happened before. So after all this, they then come up with a plan. Pedro and Mirta are going to go look for Uriel where he fell out of the truck, while Jaime goes and tries to track down Sabrina and Santino, leaving Sarah at the house to watch Jahar. And right before they leave, Mirta points out that the lights from the nearby city are completely off, which is the beginning of the protocol when a rotten is discovered and pure chaos has been let loose. So unfortunately, Pablo and Jaime are directly responsible for bringing evil to this town. So they all head off in their separate directions, and this is when Mirta begins to tell Pablo her story, which directly coincides with the arrival of these evil entities and demons that are taking over people and places. So, a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, Mirta and her husband were church leaders, and she admits right off the bat they were straight up frauds. They scammed people using religion. And the first ever possessed rotten person walked into their church. Now, at first, they thought that this was just an actor that they had hired, but quickly found out that they were wrong when this person started puking up large amounts of blood, followed by chunks of his family he had eaten the night before. And this is when society declared that God is dead and quickly ended all churches. Now, as this thing began to get out of control, these monks who were called the Cobras showed up and taught people how to kill these demonic entities who were possessing everyone, which is where those 7 rules came from and also where this weird device that we keep seeing comes from. And she tells Pedro that her and her husband became cleaners in order to pay back all of the damage that they did to the religion. And this went on for 12 long years. But after a while, the demons started to ambush the cleaners, killing them. And one night, her husband was ambushed and never returned. This caused Mirta to abandon everything and move out into the middle of nowhere to basically hide. And this is where she starts to wonder if the reason Uriel popped up in this area where almost nobody else lived is because evil had finally found her.
Yeah, makes you wonder if this whole whole setup was them using Jaime getting inside of his head to find her because she was such a big enemy that she fought them for 12 years? Or was that merely coincidence and they were going after Pedro and his kids?
Yeah, so when I first heard her say that, I was like, "Damn, that's pretty narcissistic."
Yeah, that was
But
my first, but I didn't wanna put that in here because
but
narcissistic didn't really seem like the word, but yes, very narcissistic.
yeah,
Like me, me, me.
but the thing is you've got the whole entire planet. She's living in one place, and you manage to possess someone who basically lives right next door to, like, the only person who knows where she lives. That's a pretty big fucking coincidence.
Yeah, I gotta say, I thought the same thing as a narcissistic, like, this is all about me, 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 me. That was my first thought, but considering she battled this evil for 12 years, she's a big enemy to this evil, and she completely disappeared off the radar, and then just coincidentally, this thing got led back to her house. Makes you think, was this whole movie from the very beginning culminating in it trying to track her down?
I thought about it, and I wouldn't say, it's all about her because their whole goal has always been to get a actual demon walking the earth, what they've never been able to do. But they're like, "Okay, well, we're gonna go ahead and try that again, but we might as well knock out 2 birds with 1 stone." I think it's more like that. That makes kinda more sense because, that it makes sense because, almost everybody else that they've talked to about this in the movie has like, "Well, why would it be here?" Like, they're never out in the middle of nowhere, they're always in cities, like, this doesn't make any sense of why it would be here. So, yeah, I think it does include her. I think she's part of it.
Yeah, they never really answered that question, but with the end, we'll I'll bring that up when we get there. But yeah, the question is never like directly answered, but I do think it is kind of answered a little bit more towards the end.
So after that, we then jump over to Jaime, who is slowly driving down the road, only using the headlights briefly because remember, no electric lights. When he suddenly spots Sabrina walking down the road, and as he slowly drives past her, he sees that she is eating Santino's brains like a bucket of popcorn. What a fucking image, man.
Yeah,
Like, Damian Rugna is not afraid to kill some fucking kids.
yeah, her walking to the car next to her son and eating the brains was just absolutely fucking horrifying and just creepy as fuck. But I do want to give a shout out to the cinematography here because they do this is from the passenger seat shot clearly through the passenger window of him slowly and this whole scene's done super quietly, so all you can hear is her like reaching into the skull and pulling the brains out because he's being as quiet as possible as he's rolling past her. So we get that side shot of him passing her, stopping like, 20 feet past her, and then the camera pans around the front of the car and then shows exactly what she's doing in a better light head on. And this is all done in one shot.
Yeah.
Like, if you pay attention, this whole thing from before he pulls up on her to passing her to stopping to the camera rolling around and then showing her walking past him, they did that in all one take. And the cinematography setup for that was fantastic.
Yeah, also, man, the special effects here is this is, in the top 3 effects. This looks amazing. Looks absolutely phenomenal. It's because basically she has ripped like the top of his head off, and the top of his skull is basically, like a fucking popcorn bucket. And she's literally just sticking her hand in there with no resistance. There's no fucking skull there, and just literally pulling out chunks of his brain. And if you pay really close attention, you can see, like, she's reaching deep in there, which means she's already ate pretty much his brain.
Yeah.
Like, she's just grabbing other shit at this point.
And the whole, like, mother-son the last scene we get of him is him sleeping, and he's hugging on her, and he's like, "Oh," like, "my mom's here." That's like a comfort for him. He grabs onto her real tight and goes back to sleep, and to know what she ends up doing to him just makes it all the more horrifying.
Yeah. So this shocks and scares Jaime so bad he actually stops the car right there in the middle of the road where Sabrina walks past him again, still eating a handful of brains. And after a few minutes, Jaime gets really pissed and decides that he is going to kill the shit out of this evil bitch. So he then slams his foot on the gas pedal where we see Sabrina ran over by a car for the second time in this movie, which causes her to land on the hood where he then slams the car into a tree, causing her head to smash through the windshield. After a few minutes, Jaime then gains consciousness where a now very bloody and fucked up Sabrina turns to look at him, and with her brains literally leaking out of her fucking forehead, says, "Jaime, you told me you loved me," which takes us back to the phone call where she told Pedro she slept with everybody in town,
Yeah.
and apparently his brother.
Yeah, I was wondering if you caught onto that too, because that's something that's never brought up again in any of the story. But she does make that quick comment that you told me you loved me, and it's like, oh, hold on, this is Pedro's ex-wife, and it makes you think where she talks about fucking everybody.
Yeah,
Damn.
yeah, I have seen a theory online of people thinking that maybe Jaime was actually the younger kid's dad and that, nobody just knew. Like, nobody, like, he knew and Sabrina knew, but Pedro didn't know. And that would make sense of why, like, Pedro's son has this heavy, severe autism and this other kid totally normal because they may have different dads.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
never know.
that's a decent theory, and
That,
it would make sense why he gets so mad he runs her down, knowing that that's another time where, under a high stress environment, you break the rules, like, the rules, and he just snapped and broke them.
mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if that was, your ex-wife and you had a kid and it was my nephew and I seen that, I would snap too.
Yeah. So after that, we then cut back over to the house where we see Sarah sitting in front of a fire playing with her little necklace, which is it's like a regular gold necklace, but it has a bunch of charms of her sons and grandchildren on it. And this becomes real important later. So yeah, she's just sitting there when suddenly Jahar comes walking into the room, totally normal, looks at her and says, totally normal, like nothing's wrong, "I'm hungry and cold. Can you prepare something for me to drink, please?" So obviously, the demon was finally able to figure out his mind and take control of his body and is trying to play this off like he is completely normal. Did you catch him wrapping the wool blanket around him when he's like, "I'm cold"?
Yeah.
Well, apparently, this was put in there to show that he is now a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Huh.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. They put that in there. I do love that it kinda shows that now that the evil has taken over his mind, like, the evil, once it gets inside of people and it possesses people, it does its best impression of
Yeah.
that person,
Mhm.
and it can't do an impression of this kid with severe autism. So it just tries to play it off as a normal
Yeah.
conversation, but clearly the grandma knows
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean,
he's possessed.
he can't normally
Yeah.
even walk.
Yeah.
Now he's just walking fine. So we then see Pedro and Merta arrive at the spot where Uriel fell out of the truck, and at first they don't know where to go look for him until Merta notices a sign for a school, and she tells Pedro that she's positive that that is where he would have went because evil loves children and children love evil. And according to Damian Rugna, the reason that he put this in the movie is because his whole life he always noticed how young people are attracted to fascism. And most people who have actually lived through fascism consider it to be very cruel and evil.
Huh.
Yep.
Interesting.
So they arrive at this school where at first it looks empty, but while looking through the windows, they find a classroom full of kids just sitting there in the dark, staring at nothing, telling them that they are in the right place. So they then head inside and approach the classroom where Merta tries to ask where Uriel is, but it becomes obvious pretty quickly that the kids have no interest in helping them out. And Pedro here notices a few things. One, all the kids have like Kool-Aid stain around their mouths, which we find out is actually from blood. And two, they are covered in this white powder that he also saw in the auditorium. So they then head outside where Mirta tells Pablo that the kids definitely aren't going to help them, and she has never seen anything quite like this before. But this conversation gets interrupted when a kid on a bicycle comes up and heads inside the school, which, if you got those eagle eyes, you will recognize this kid as the one they almost hit in the road at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, wondering if you had that same theory too. That it
Yep.
was the same kid on the bike. The quote asshole going to school,
Yep.
as Mr. Obsessed with his land called him or referred to him as. I will say, like, there is just something inherently super fucking creepy and unsettling about a bunch of kids in this town have went to this school and they're all sitting at their desks, like almost praying at night. That's just horrifying.
Oh, yeah.
This
Super creepy.
this whole thing is like what I wish that they would make. Like this whole vibe. I wish they would make a Children of the Corn
Oh, yeah. So
with this vibe.
that's literally like further down in my notes. It's like, I don't know if I've talked about on the show that I fucking hate Children of the Corn. It's such a good idea, but every execution is dog shit. This would be how you make a Children of the Corn.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
think I
like,
put it in there when they start beating Mirta with a hammer. But I'm like, this is what a Children of the Corn should be.
yeah.
This.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. Everything about the kids is just super creepy and unsettling. And there's just something super creepy about kids and horror and
Yeah.
evil and kids who are supposed to be innocent and happy doing these grotesque evil acts, which is the whole basis of Children of the Corn. And every time I see this, I think this is what we need in
Yeah.
a Children of the Corn.
So after this, Pedro then starts telling Mirta that he will go inside and make those goddamn kids talk, even if he's got to use violence. But Mirta shoots this down, saying that they have to be very careful because everyone's lives are at stake. But this gets interrupted by that same kid who comes running back out of the school and asks them if they're looking for Uriel, which he then proceeds to tell them that he is at his teacher's house down by the traffic circle. So the kid heads back inside, and Pedro's like, fuck yeah, let's go. But Mirta is very suspicious of this. Pedro then jumps in the truck, but Mirta then walks over, opens the door, and tells him that this is probably a trap. A little girl then comes running out, crying, telling Pedro that the little boy is lying and that Uriel is really at her house, which is close by. But by this point, Pedro is pretty aggravated, and this is where he bashes that little girl with the truck door, knocking her to the ground. He then climbs on top of her, starts to strangle her, and then hit her in the face. He's not scared to beat the shit out of a child.
Yeah, Pedro took that I will literally beat a kid's ass to a whole
Yeah.
new level.
So after he punches her in the face a few times, Mirta gets out of the truck and tells him that she's pretty sure Uriel's here. And this is where Pedro looks at this little girl and he notices again all of this white dust on her clothes and hands, which tells him they should check the auditorium
For cocaine.
for, a lot of cocaine. So they head back into the school where Pedro takes Mirta to where he found all the white powder on the stage. And this is where he also notices there's a hammer sitting there. So he uses this hammer to pull up one of the floorboards of the stage, revealing a bunch of dead bodies in there, which apparently belong to the teachers and parents. Mirta then walks over and looks down in the hole where she tells Pedro she's never seen some shit like this before and he needs to go get her kit. But it is very important that he do not run. He needs to slowly walk out there and slowly walk back. And when he goes to do this, they notice all of these kids standing in there watching him. And this is where he asks if she thinks the kids did this, and she tells him those are not kids anymore. So while Pedro goes to get her stuff, the kids start demanding that they leave and that they're going to die if they stay. And this is where they reveal that the white powder on the bodies is lime in order to hide the smell. And it becomes very obvious that the kids are trying to get them the fuck out of here before they find what they have or where they have hidden Uriel. So Pedro returns with the box and he hands it to Mirta, who begins setting up her thing. I don't know what it's called. While he begins to rip out the boards of the stage and pull out the stack of dead bodies. After a few of these bodies are out of the way, Pedro freezes as he notices Uriel's face. And this is where we are shown that essentially Uriel had these kids stack these dead bodies on top of him. Once he is uncovered, he then looks up at Pedro and says, "Kill me now." Because remember, one of the 7 rules is you can't kill a possessed person without it spreading. But Mirta interrupts this interaction by yelling out to Pedro that the only way to kill him is with this device and he must pull Uriel out in order for her to shoot him with this thing. So Pedro attempts to get him out, but he is way too fucking heavy. Because if you remember from earlier, it was hard for 3 grown-ass men to pick him up. So yeah, there's no way he can get him out by himself. So Pedro yells back to Mirta that the only way that she is going to be able to get him is if he dismantles the stage, which she tells him to go ahead and do. And this is when Uriel looks up at him and says, "You wanted to kill yourself with your kids, you can do that with me." Which totally proves that he did attempt to use the heater exhaust to kill himself and his children, despite what his brother said earlier. So at this point, Pedro has had enough of this and he starts screaming at Uriel to just shut the fuck up, when suddenly the little girl starts yelling at Pedro, telling him that there is a fire axe in the back office that he can use to dismantle the floor faster. But before he can even react, Mirta tells him, "Do not listen to her, she is a liar." So Pedro now has to make a choice because he has Mirta and this little girl both yelling at him at the same time. Tensions are extremely high when suddenly Uriel tells him that this is all your fault. And we know that the possessed can read your mind, find out your deepest fears, and use them against you, which is exactly what he is trying to do here. Mirta then yells back at him, telling him not to let Uriel manipulate him, but it is too late as we then see Pablo jump up and run towards the back office, leaving Mirta all alone with the kids and Uriel. And this is the part that everybody hates and complains about, but I personally love it. And I'll explain why. So Pedro then makes it back to the office when he notices that the red box on the wall is empty. There is no axe, and he realizes that the girl lied to him, but when he goes to turn around to run back out there, the kids shut the door and use the wire around the doorknob, trapping him. And as he attempts to break the door open, we then hear Mirta screaming, "No, no, stop." Pedro then looks through the glass window where he sees a couple of the kids dragging a now injured Mirta across the floor, when suddenly one of the kids begins beating her in the head with the hammer until she finally dies. So Pedro is finally able to break the door open, and when he runs out there, he realizes that Mirta is too far gone to be saved, and this machine that she had to kill Uriel is now broken all over the floor. He then kneels down and begins to cry when suddenly Uriel pops his head out from the hole and begins to call Pedro to him, knowing that he is going to try and kill him. And that is exactly what happens as Pedro grabs a piece of the machine, jumps up, and then beats Uriel's head in like a rotten pumpkin.
Yeah, I don't think that's the way Marta intended that you use that machine to kill the rotten.
Nope, that
Uh,
doesn't count.
God, Marta being dragged across the floor while this child is repeatedly beating her skull in with the hammer, and it looks so good. Like, the practical effects on it look great. We get an up close shot, and then, like, out of nowhere, this hammer comes and just bashes her skull in, and then we see as she's being dragged off, this kid just it's so creepy because this kid swings a hammer such like a kid would swing a hammer,
Yeah.
and it's over and over again. It's just total overkill, and all these other, like, kids are excited as they drag her body off, and it's like it's just so disturbing and so creepy, and you feel so bad for Marta in this situation. I do know what you're talking about with everybody being aggravated at Pedro. It's like you get this far, Marta is hunted these things for years. Everything she said has been spot on. Why would you listen to this fucking kid telling you to go get this axe? Like, why would you get tricked into that? Like you did. I get he was in a position where he was like, okay, I can't rip this whole stage apart with a hammer. And, Marta's yelling at me to hurry. But why would you ever leave the room? And that just goes back to one of the big themes of this movie of, how people react to things outside of what they normally would under these high pressure situations.
Well, so my thing with him is I think that this scene is genius because we know from everything we've seen in the movie, like the police know him very well. He obviously gets in trouble a lot. He literally jacked the fucking police chief up against the wall. He is a hothead. He makes bad decisions. He makes bad decisions because he doesn't stop and think things through. And I think that this is a perfect example of a realistic person. He is not a good decision maker, especially under, high strung situations. His whole entire past has shown that. And one thing that drives me nuts that so many movies do is they take the underdog and he turns it around at the end and saves everybody. But that's not realistic. Most of the time, somebody who is a fuck up their whole life is not going to turn around and save the world. And I think that this choice, despite how mad people get over, like, why couldn't he just listen? There are people like that in the world. No matter what you do, like, just turn on fucking Cops and you will see people being fucking idiots when they could have just got a ticket or walked off and it was fine.
Well, I agree that he is a bad decision maker, but in this particular situation, I feel like would, I would, being in Marta clearly is way more familiar with this situation than he is. She's been right about everything. I would not, decision making or not, like I would be fully under her control. She would be leading this situation if I was him. If she told me not to do something, I would not do it. Like I could see him like getting mad and starting and like beating the kids to death with a hammer or something because he makes bad decisions and he has an anger issue and these kids are like trying to get in his head and him just snapping and just, fucking that little girl up with that hammer. But to leave her in the room by herself while she's telling him not to. Like before he fully leaves the room, she's saying, "Do not leave me in here by myself." And she is his lifeline right now. And not just his lifeline, his kids and the world's lifeline at this point, and he still makes the frustrating decision. But like I said, it as frustrating as it is, that is something that's shown through all the characters throughout this movie, almost all the characters. I think Marta's the only one that doesn't make a really bad decision and breaks one of the rules in the heat of the moment. But yeah, Marta's death, though, like her death was really stuck with me just out of how excited those kids are beating her with that hammer.
Yeah, that's where my Children of the Corn was originally in my notes.
Also, I think that it might be something said to Marta's theory that this whole thing was put in place
For her.
to lead them to her, because after her death, they could have easily killed Pedro, but they don't. They don't kill Pedro. After her death, obviously, we get to the climax here at the end, and they leave Pedro alone. And if he was the target all along, they would have killed him, or they would have lured her out of the room. But they don't. So I think there is something to be said to her theory.
So now that Uriel is dead, Pedro takes a step back, kneels on the floor, feeling totally helpless and great shame for what he has done. We then see the kids calmly walk back in behind him, just staring in his direction, when suddenly we begin to hear some movement from the stage floor. All the kids then smile as a naked child climbs out of the hole, completely covered in blood. He then walks towards Pedro, and as he passes by him, he rubs his 4 bloody fingers across his forehead, leaving a mark. We see that it is now dawn, and the kids open up these big sliding doors where they all walk out into the schoolyard, and this is where we get the real-life image that we seen Jahar draw when he was in the car of all the kids standing around the other kid who was like completely covered in blood as they walk towards the sunrise. So obviously, this is now the physical embodiment of evil here on Earth, which, if you remember what Merta said, has never happened before. We then cut to Pedro, Jaime, and Jahar arriving back at their house, where Pedro takes a shower, but when he gets out, he discovers that the mark on his forehead from the evil kid won't come off. So he is permanently left with this mark of the beast, essentially so everyone knows that he's the one responsible for all of this.
Also, when he first shows up back to the house, and it's a very quick part of the movie, but his brother, Pedro's brother, runs up to him crying and giving him this hug. And then they kind of skip to them getting back to the house. But it's very insinuated that their mom, who's not mentioned again, but it very much seems like the way I took it before I even watched the ending of this, that their mom did not make it through the night.
No, yeah, they just assumed somebody
I think
came and got her, yeah.
that's like his brother runs up to him and just absolutely loses it and has this breakdown, and like it hugs him and clearly tells him what's happened.
So we then jump to Jaime, who is walking around the property when he discovers that Maria's youngest son from the very beginning of the movie is still sleeping in their barn. And when he walks up, the kid starts to tell him that he heard a voice inside of his head that made him go and kill the cleaner from the government before he arrived to kill Uriel. He then chopped his body up and fed it to the pigs, where he also ate some of the human flesh. And a now very angry Jaime asks him what happened to your mother, and he responds, the same thing that happened to your mother. We then cut back to the house where we see Jahar eating a bowl of apple ice cream with Pedro sitting by the fireplace when suddenly Jahar starts to choke. Pedro then rushes over to help him when he begins to stick his fingers in his mouth to clear out whatever is causing the issue. This scene's like super hard for me to watch because it makes me want to fucking gag watching him stick his fingers down that kid's throat. Ugh. I would not have been able to shoot that scene. So, as Pedro is feeling for whatever is in his mouth, Jahar starts to cough it up, when suddenly a huge thing of blood comes pouring out. Pedro is obviously super confused by this, but continues to try and pull whatever this is out, which he does, as we start to see long strands of bloody hair come out of his mouth. Pedro then pulls more and more out until he comes across an actual bloody chunk of scalp, which he just tosses onto the floor. And as he stares in confusion at his son, he starts to see something shiny just past his lips. It then falls out, hitting the floor, landing in the mix of melted ice cream and bright red blood. And as Pedro looks down, he realizes it is his mother's necklace with the family charms on it. And now, with the realization that his son ate his fucking mother, he heads outside, falls to his knees, and literally loses it. Jaime then walks over and doesn't even have to ask what happened, as he then leans against the truck and begins crying. And that is the end of When Evil Lurks.
Yeah, I love when Uriel's kid brother tells Jaime that his mom died the same way your mom died, because it instantly clicked to me. Holy shit.
Yeah.
He ate grandma.
That's super grim.
And then they snap to that scene and they start pulling all the fucking hair and shit, and it's just super, super dark. Because my thought whenever they first get back to the house is they have no idea that this autistic son of his was possessed.
No,
Like,
they don't have any clue that
they,
happened.
like, skip past all of that. Like, they jump to the end. A lot of viewers, I feel like, has forgotten that, because it was a very quick scene that they put in there of him acting normal. And then when he makes that comment, I was like, holy shit, he ate grandma.
Yes, he did.
Grandma got eaten.
It was like the opposite of a rabid granny.
Yeah.
A rabid grandson.
Rabid autistic grandson ate granny.
Yeah.
Yeah, super, super grim. Like, the 10 out of 10 on the grim ending.
Yeah. It's good. This whole fucking movie's good, man. They managed to do a possession movie without including, like, religion.
Yeah, there's no Catholic Church in
No,
it.
I
It's
love it.
insane.
Yeah, the effects are amazing. The characters are fantastic and believable. Acting's amazing.
You almost forget that this is a possession movie.
Yeah, and, a lot of people listen probably know that I'm not a fan of possession movies because they're almost always the same movie. But when you get a couple movies, man, that can really do possession but different, like we talked about that with Talk to Me. Talk to Me is a possession movie. But it's different. And so is this. Like, I love that you're taking a, very basic story that's been done a million times, but you're making it to where I don't even realize it's a possession movie until I stop and think about it really hard. That's awesome.
Yeah, Jahar, choking up grandma's body parts, her scalp and her fucking head and all that too. It was foreshadowed earlier in the movie too, when Marta is talking about the first rot that she came across, and she said, "Yeah, I didn't believe it until she started choking up the family members
like
that
puking
she
out,
had
yeah.
eaten the night before."
Yeah.
So that's a kind of a foreshadowing on the ending there of grandma being eaten and then choking up at the end. That's the last scene.
Yeah, fantastic ending. I know I've heard a lot of people, they have the theory that after Pedro discovers this, he actually takes his son and throws him in the fireplace, because apparently in the last shot, you can see a ton of black smoke coming out of the chimney, and we see Jaime walk over to the door and kind of look into the house, and he doesn't even need to know anymore. I don't necessarily agree or disagree with that. I have no idea. I kind of just take the end for what it is. But yeah, a lot of people think that he kind of breaks down because he just kills his son. I don't know if he would do that because it's his last kid. I don't know if he would just go crazy and kill him like that, but I mean, it's possible.
Well, Marta says that specifically that the demon can get caught in this limbo over and over again of figuring out the mind and then kinda getting trapped out,
Mhm.
and because the I guess the more autistic, the harder it is for the demon to really control the mind, and they get stuck in this limbo. So, he may very well have thrown him in the fire.
Maybe. All right, so I got a couple quick facts here. So, this is what writer and director Damian Rugna had to say about the goat killing scene. Quote, I hated making that scene. I had a lot of problems with that sequence and it was not easy to shoot. It was a 1 day shoot in the daylight with animals and lots of effects. All of it needed to be completed in 10 hours and the goats kept running away from us. 150 goats just doing whatever they wanted to do. The daylight was changing constantly because of the clouds. It was truly a horrible experience. In the end, everyone loved that scene. Maybe I will love it in a couple years, but as of right now, I hate it. The goats are crazy. The owner of the goat said that they can do some things if we baited them with food, but they are actually untrainable because they're all crazy.
And you remember when we covered The Witch, Black
Yep.
Phillip was like a fucking they said he was like the worst goat out of all of them.
Yep.
Like, he was awful.
So, the whole reason why Damien added the part where the churches basically caused this demon outbreak is because he absolutely despises the business of religion. He doesn't hate religion itself, but he hates how there is so much money involved and how so many people have used the church to prey on innocent poor people and become wealthy while their followers remain poor and sick. 100% with you there.
Yeah, I think the Grindhouse Syndicate fully supports that message.
Yep. Apparently, shooting the film with kids was a nightmare in Argentina because of the laws put in place for child actors. They were only allowed to film a few hours a day, a couple days a week. They couldn't have any fake blood or effects on set when a child was present, and none of the kids could have fake blood on them for the scene, including red paint. So for the final scene, they had to use a completely different color. So they used blue paint and they changed that in post production, which is why the demon kid at the end looks so fucking red and shiny. It was actually blue. Had to
Uh,
change that. Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yep. Ratings and kill count. So I got a total of 11 kills. We have the cleaner from the government who was shot and chopped up. We have Ruiz, who was chopped in the face with the axe. His wife, who chopped herself in the face with the axe. Vicky was attacked by Roger the dog. Leo was possessed and wrecked his car. Santino, his brain was eaten by his mom. Merta was killed by kids with a hammer. Uriel was possessed and had his head bashed in by Pablo. Maria was eaten by her son. Sarah was eaten by Jahar. And Sabrina was crushed by a truck twice. All right, so my favorite kill, I had such a hard time with the favorite kill. Like, it took me 2 days. I went with Vicky because of the shock factor, but I had a close second of Ruiz. But man, it was like it was back and forth between Vicky, Ruiz, and Santino, man. I just literally bounced around until I finally settled on that. Yeah.
I didn't pick Santino because we don't actually get to see him die, but this is probably the first time this has ever happened in the show. There's so many amazing kills in this that
Yeah.
our kills do not match up. So I went with my favorite being Ruiz's wife. I thought the slow, self-inflicted axe wounds were super fucking creepy and unsettling, especially as they get slower and slower as her brain literally is dying of trauma. Thought that was fucking amazing. A close second being Marta being beaten in the head with a hammer as she gets dragged off. Something about the kids and how excited they were to bash her skull in, which, like I said, makes me think that there was something to her theory in the first place because they're so happy to kill her, but they leave Pedro alone. It was just both of those kills were super unsettling, super creepy, and the practical effects on them were fantastic.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had this much trouble picking not just a favorite kill, but even just like a second.
They're all
Yeah,
great.
they're literally all good. So film rating, man, I gave this movie 5. This is a 5-star movie for me. It's fantastic. Characters, the world building, like the way they built this whole world and this history without it really like being super heavy on the plot was amazing. Effects are 10 out of 10. Kills are 10 out of 10. Cinematography and acting, both phenomenal. But the biggest thing of all to me was it's unique. It's its own thing. It's its own fucking thing with its own characters, like realistic characters, and its own history and world building. This was the first time I actually thought, this week was the first time I actually thought about it as a possession movie. It just totally kind of went over my head the first 6 times I watched it. But yeah, man, I think this is a fucking phenomenal movie.
So I gave this a 4.7. Love the original story. The fact that it is a possession story and it is completely unlike any possession story. I absolutely love that. Super original. The acting was great from everybody. The pace was absolutely fantastic, and they continue to throw you for a loop like the whole movie.
Yes,
There's these
absolutely.
changes. Love that. The two shining stars of this movie for me is the practical effects and the cinematography. The movie was shot absolutely beautifully. Like, if you
It
really
was.
pay attention, there's a couple shots that are just set up perfectly. I thought that they, like, for the unsettling feel of this movie, the cinematography did a fantastic job, and the practical effects were a 10 out of a 10 for me. To have a movie where all the kills could be in the top 2 kills
Totally.
is very rare.
Yeah, totally. A lot of amazing shots in this movie. I mean, just like at the beginning where they come across the half of the hand just sitting on a log, it's just perfectly takes up the corner of your screen.
Yeah,
And you see, yeah. I mean, it's just, there's so much good stuff. That very beginning where they're actually first walking out to the woods in the morning and we're above them, that's
yeah.
a great shot, man. Yeah. Good movie, man. Once again, we thank you guys for listening. Please give us a follow or like if you enjoy the show. Check out the website, check out the socials, go to the shop and get you a t-shirt. Tell a friend, a family member, or your possessed dog about the show, and we hope to see you next time.